Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. My name's Grace Ngabire. I'm the CEO of Richter. To those who are in the room who don't know who we are a not-for-profit organization. We represent the interest of the internet community. So by saying internet community, what we do, we provide workshops, we provide trainings in line with ICT. And basically one of them is this one that where you are present. So we are mostly known for RW. So we have been mandated by the regulator to manage the country top level domain, which is .rw. But we have another service that we manage as well called the Internet Exchange Point of Rwanda, which is a service that helps to localize whatever content that is produced and consumed in Rwanda to stay local. So in a nutshell, this is who we are. So we are happy to have you on board. I think those, at least we have 29 participants already, and we're expecting more. So today, as you know, we are having a session on Let's Encrypt. But before we kick off, I did some research just before joining the call. And as you know, there's no denying facts that the internet is an integral part of the modern life, of our daily lives. So every minute, we as a population send around more than 190 million emails. We make more than 4.1 million Google searches and download more than 400 apps. That happens only in 1 minute. So however, while our ever-increasing use of internet provides us with endless communication, learning and technological opportunities, it also makes us vulnerable to a whole wealth of web-based threats. So according to a recent research from Verizon, web apps are involved in 43% of all breaches. So based on an analysis of 7 million websites, SiteLock reports that websites currently experience an average of 94 attacks every day, and they are visited by bots approximately 2,600 times a week. Someone will wonder how many websites are really secured worldwide. So I will leave this question to you guys to do your own research and find out how many websites are secured, how many apps are secured worldwide. So today we have an expert who will be teaching about the Let's Encrypt certificate, a non-for-profit certificate authority providing TLS certificate to over than 260 million websites. So our guest today is called Philip Pips. I hope I pronounced the name well. So Philip Pips is a consultant and contractor. He's a free BSD committer contributing mainly to the kernel and a member of the FreeBSD security team. So he was one of the main organizers of FOSDEM, the largest annual open source software conference in Europe, from early 2000 until 2015. I know in his free time, he loves teaching. So that's why we have here today Philip Pips, who will take you through a demo, a presentation on Let's Encrypt. But before he kick off, what we would like to remind you is that we have the chat section that will be mainly used for questions. So we'll start collecting questions at the end of the session for us to give him ample time to go through the presentation, to go through the demo, and you understand well what he's supposed to do. So apart from that, we have a team that is present from Richter. Richard will be the one collecting all the questions that will come through the chat and will address them at the end of the session. This does not mean that people won't speak. At the end of the session, you are free as well to unmute yourself or Richard will unmute you so that you can ask him a question you want if you don't want to put it in the chat. So in a nutshell, that was it. I would like this session really not to be as if we are in a class. I want this to be really interactive. Even though Philip will be talking and taking you through the demo, I would like at the end of the session to have you people engaged, to ask questions. I'm sure many of you have used already Let's Encrypt, and you have many questions to address now. So feel free to post them in the chat and to ask them at the end of the session. So thank you so much. So Philip, I know it's late in where you are in Bangkok, but we are happy to host you tonight in your country. Thank you, and you are welcome.
Hello, I'm not in Bangkok, I'm in Hong Kong, but you know, that only makes it an hour later.
Sorry.
Take it easy. It's all the same, somewhere in Asia. Yeah, so my name is Philip Paps. I really don't care how people pronounce my last name if they get my first name right. I wear many hats. I also have a presentation, which if Zoom will let me, is going to show up on your screen too. Let's take a look. No, that's not what I wanted. I wanted to do a slideshow, and then I want to do share, but then Zoom disappears. There we go. Right. Can everyone see my presentation? I can't see you anymore.
Yes, we can see.
Excellent. So I wear many hats. I don't work for Let's Encrypt. I have nothing to do with them. I just use Let's Encrypt, and I encourage everyone else to use Let's Encrypt as well, or I encourage everyone else to encrypt all the things, and I encourage everyone to automate all the things. And the important thing about this presentation is really the automation rather than the encryption. Let's Encrypt is just one of different possibilities to encrypt your things and automate them. So historically, the process of getting a certificate for anything, usually a website with HTTPS, is that you go and you sacrifice a chicken and you generate the certificate, which usually involves long sessions of pleading and asking Openssl to do something for you and generate some files, or if not Openssl, then IIS or something else. At some point during this process, you will get a certificate signing request, which is kind of file. It's X509 encoded, and it has the name of your domain in there. And you send this certificate signing request, this CSR file, you send it to a certificate authority. And this certificate authority, you then have to convince to sign your certificate. And by signing your certificate, what they do is they say, you know, we believe that you are who you say you are, and anyone who sees this certificate can trust it. What that really means is you give them money, and they sell you a number, and every year you come back and they take your money again, and they issue you exactly the same certificate with some different dates on it. The process is tedious, it's expensive, and you have to do it every year. So there's a couple of strong disincentives to actually do this. And the end result is that it's easier simply not to encrypt your web page. So I don't want to rant about this too long, but certificate authorities, they're commercial organizations. They're answerable first to their shareholders, and their primary objective is money. So they are in the business of taking your money and giving you a certificate. It's a commercial relationship. The security of the internet is really only of secondary concern to these organizations. And that's all I'm going to say about that. More importantly for this presentation is that you go through this process once a year. You do it annually. And anything you only do once a year, anything you do annually, you end up doing manually. which means you're going to make mistakes. Openssl is hardly the most intuitive piece of software out there, to say nothing of IIS or any of the other things you use to generate your certificates. And also because it's done once a year, you're going to forget. You might put something on your calendar a few days before it expires to tell you, hey, I should probably renew my certificates, or more than likely the certificate authority will send you an email 6 months before your certificate expires to ask you, please give us some more money and we'll review it for you. So you end up giving these people money every 6 months. But at the end of the day, you're going to make a mistake, and your secure and encrypted website is going to end up showing warning messages, and people are just going to click through this. And at the end of the day, the internet is not very secure, and we want to work to make this better. A recent example of this, when I gave this tutorial in Kenya back in June. When I say in Kenya, I mean I was in Hong Kong and people in Kenya were listening to me. They had very carefully allowed their certificates to expire just before I gave my presentation. That was very helpful of them. So you see these sort of warning messages saying, you're trying to go to, lists.nog.ke, and it expired on you. In this case, it was Let's Encrypt, but it could be any other issuer. Closer to home today, Grace and friends have helpfully allowed the RICTA certificate to expire. I'm sure they did this just for me. In this case, it wasn't actually their certificate that expired. Their certificate is good until the 2nd of January, but one of the intermediate certificates expired. I'll talk more about that as we go through the tutorial. But these are the sort of error messages people get when you have to manually update your certificates and get them reissued every year. You're going to forget. These are also the messages you get if you automate things and then you forget to monitor them. So the title of this presentation is Automate All the Things, but automation is only half of the story. The other half of the story is monitor all the things. And there's plenty of other people who teach monitoring classes, and I would encourage you to attend them. Let's talk about this automation thing. Let's Encrypt is a not-for-profit certificates authority. They are free. You don't give them money. They are automatic. You don't have to engage with web forms. You don't need to convince a bureaucracy to go and verify that you are who you say you are. They will just check if your name in the DNS matches what you're giving the certificate, and you're done. It's secure. Their protocol has been vetted by security researchers. They agree that it's secure, and they issue certificates that everyone can agree are just as secure as the ones you give money for. They are also transparent. So every time you issue a Let's Encrypt certificate, they will put an entry in one of several different ledgers so that you can track who has issued certificates in your name. And you can, potentially you can monitor these ledgers and you can check, hey, someone else has issued a certificate in my name. That's not great. Shouldn't happen, but you can monitor it. It's transparent, and you can keep an eye on these things. You can also keep an eye on what else they're issuing. So if suddenly they start issuing certificates which are clearly wrong, someone is going to notice. Transparency is great on the internet. They're an open sort of organization. They have forums and discussion groups, and they will engage with the community, and they're happy to help out. Cooperative is basically the same thing. They are happy to help their users, and their protocol develops and is improved in function of their users. So it's all really great. And everyone listening is probably asking, so where's the catch? And well, there isn't a catch. It's really as good as it looks. It's free, it's open, it's automatic, all of those good things. No reason not to use it. When I originally wrote this presentation, Let's Encrypt was the only issuer of free and automatic certificates. Since then, 0SSL who are also an organization that is happy to take your money for a certificate, will also issue free certificates for you using exactly the same process as Let's Encrypt, which we shall see. I think this is a great thing. A monopoly is never good, even if it's a monopoly of free things. So having a couple of players in this space is great. Zero SSL has a couple of different plans. The only one I think is worth mentioning is their free plan, which is substantially identical to Let's Encrypt. They've also got some paid plans where they will monitor your stuff for you, but you could monitor things just as well yourself. And they also have some other plans where they engage in the traditional CA model where they take your money and they issue a certificate for you. I don't think that's a great business model, but I can't do anything about it. So let's go back to Let's Encrypt, or more accurately, the ACME protocol, the automated certificates issuing protocol, which Let's Encrypt uses. It works roughly like this. So you are the administrator of a web server, say example.com, or as we'll see later in this tutorial, encrypt.rw. You have your web server and you're trying to get a certificate for it from Let's Encrypt. So you ask Let's Encrypt, hey guys, could you please issue a certificate for me? And Let's Encrypt will say, yeah, sure, I can do that for you, provided that you put the string ED98 on this web page and you sign it with this key I've just sent you as part of this message. So you then go and do exactly that. You put this file on your website, you sign it with a key, you tell Let's Encrypt that you've done it, they go and verify it. If it all smells good to Let's Encrypt, they will issue your certificate and you're good. The one catch is that that certificate is only going to be valid for 90 days. It's not going to be valid for a year. 90 days is all you've got. So if you're going to do this dance manually, you're going to be spending a lot of time talking to these Let's Encrypt people and changing your certificates. That it's really not sustainable or feasible to do this manually. So you're going to do it automatically. And the way you do that is you use something called ACME, which is the Automated Certificates Management Environment, which is documented in RFC 8555. As RFCs goes, this one is fairly readable. You can go and read it, and it's not very exciting. The plot's a little thin. The characters are, there's no development, but it's a fairly readable RFC, and it's essentially a JSON-based protocol over HTTPS that sends messages back and forth. And there are several implementations of this protocol. The reference implementation of the protocol is something called Certbots. Like all reference implementations, it's a little bit awkward. You can think of it in the same way you think of binds or you think of sendmail. It has many dependencies and it makes many assumptions. Primarily, it assumes that everyone is running Linux, that everyone is running a web server, and that everyone is happy to expose this web server to the internet. Are these valid assumptions? I don't think so, but if those assumptions match your environment, there's nothing wrong with running Certbots. This presentation, I will focus on something called acme.sh, which is a tiny, tiny shell script. You can go and read it. It's very easy to read. And it has no awkward dependencies. It will run as is on anything that smells a little bit like Unix, or run on Linux. It'll run on, if it's got a shell, it will run. There are many other clients of this protocol. The Let's Encrypt web page listed over 100 of them in several different languages the last time I looked. I picked acme.sh because it's at the top of the alphabet. Not really. I use it because someone else is using it, and it worked for them. Turns out it works for me as well. So pick another client if you don't like this one, but there's much to like about this. So in a nutshell, to install acme.sh, and we'll go and do this, these slides are not very exciting. You just clone a Git repository, you type acme.sh --install, Or if you're that sort of person, you can curl a link and pipe it into your shell, and it'll do the same thing. Three things will happen. It will copy itself into your home directory. It'll set up an alias in your shell, and it'll set up a cron job to renew your certificates every night. So every night it'll check, is this certificate due for renewal? If yes, renew. If no, do nothing. And as we'll see, it calls a few hooks so that once your renewed certificate is issued, you can automatically put it in your web server or anywhere else you like. Issuing a single certificate, it's really simple. acme.sh issue, domain name, and then this is a web root. If you're running a web server, it will do exactly the same thing as Certbot does. It'll put the challenge under your web page. It'll tell the ACME, the Let's Encrypt server, that your challenge is there. The challenge will be verified and everything will be good. If you want to put multiple domains in the same certificate, it's really quite intuitive. You just add more -d options. And that's not very exciting. The web mode is exactly the same as Certbot. The only added value of acme.sh in web modes is that it's a lot smaller than the reference implementation. Where acme.sh really shines is that it's got two additional modes of operation, which I think are much better than the web modes. The first of those is standalone mode, where you don't need a web server. But you do need privilege to bind to port 80. So the shell script is going to pretend to be a web server, and it's going to do the challenge response thing for you, pretending that it's a web server. So it still needs a publicly reachable machine. You still need to have port 80 and privilege to bind to it, but it's standalone, it's small, and I think that looks a lot better, or that's nicer than the bulky Certbots. So you might like that sort of thing. But the mode where I'm going to focus on today is the DNS mode, which is where the real magic is. Instead of having a web server, you use the DNS to prove that you are who you say you are. So instead of putting your challenge on your web server, you're putting your challenge in the DNS. And this has a number of advantages. For one thing, you don't need a web server. That's the obvious one. But for the other, you can generate certificates for things which are in the DNS, but which are not necessarily on the public internet. So my favorite use case of this is a printer. Most printers, or big printers at least, have control panels and interfaces that are on web pages. And web browsers like to cry that these are not encrypted. So you might as well get a certificate for your printer. But unless, well, you're not going to put your printer on the internet because that's a fire hazard. And you don't even want to put the name of your printer in the public DNS because there's no need. But the DNS mode of ACME allows you to still get a certificate for this printer, which is not on the internet and isn't even on the DNS, using challenge aliases. And I'll explain this in excruciating detail with a demo in a bit. But that's where this really shines. And a printer is just one example. Anything in your network can have a publicly issued trustworthy certificate. So you can put certificates on all these devices on your network. As long as you can put the certificate on them, they'll be publicly valid certificates, and you don't need to put exceptions in your web browsers or your management machines to connect to these encrypted services. And this is all good because you don't need to add insecurities to get to these devices on your network. Before I go into the demo and the hands-on bits, I want to do a brief digression on rate limits. Let's Encrypt.org and ZeroSSL are public internet services, and they issue certificates for you if you ask for them, but they don't want you hammering their services for testing. So they have some limits. They're generous, but they're firm. And the moral of the story is don't test in production, use the test servers. And both of ZeroSSL and Let's Encrypt.org have test setups or staging environments, and acme.sh, the script I'm going to show, knows how to use these. So when you start setting up your own workflow here, tests using the staging environments don't test against the production environment. You will run into the limits, and it'll waste your time and it will waste public resources. So test using the staging environment. The key limits of Let's Encrypt are that you can get 50 certificates per week per registered domain. That's a lot, especially if you take into account that renewals don't count. The FreeBSD project uses Let's Encrypt for all our machines. We have about 150 physical machines, about 400 jails with, I don't know how many names we've got certificates for, but many. And we do not run into this 50 per week limit in production because renewals don't count. If you find yourself issuing more than 50 new certificates per week, you will need to stagger them. But for most reasonably sized infrastructures, 50 certificates per week is not a huge hardship. Duplicate certificates, and this is the one you will run into if you try to test in production, you're only allowed 5 of those per week. So why do I say you're going to run into this if you test in production? Well, you issue it and, oh no, something went wrong, or I've lost a private key. You issue it again with the same name. Oh no, this one was almost right, but now I've gone and moved it to another machine and I've lost it again. Do this a couple of times and you will run into this limit, and then you have to wait a week before you can issue it again. So it's a huge waste of time. Don't test it in production. Failed validation, 5 per account per host name per hour. Again, this is clearly something you're going to run into if you try to test in production. The staging environment doesn't have these limits, and you can test against that with reckless abandon, and you'll have a much better time of it. And then once everything works in the staging environment, go and do it in production, and it'll be tested and it will work, and you won't have wasted your own time or a public resource. So I think that's good enough slides. Let me get rid of my slides and find a terminal window. You should feel free to ask any questions as we go along.
A group of HRM, morning and evening.
I hear something, but I don't think I heard a question. Maybe that was just someone on the phone. All right, let me find a window here. Where's my window? Here's the terminal window. Where is it? There it is. So I have set up a little test environment where I will show off this DNS mode. I've also set up a domain in Rwanda. I've set up encrypt.rw, and you can find encrypt.rw in the public DNS. There's no rabbits up my sleeves, no hidden magic. It's all on the public DNS. I've set this one up today. If you go in a web browser and you go to encrypt.rw, you will see that it has a real Let's Encrypt certificate on it. So now I've put a couple of other things in the DNS. Actually, let me show the other terminal window before I show you this one. This is a better terminal window, same terminal window, but it's got something else in it. So I've set up the encrypt.rw zone, which isn't very exciting. It lives on my DNS server. It has the usual stuff on it. Hurricane Electric happily and helpfully gives me free DNS for it. And I've put a couple of things in the DNS for today's tutorial. I've put in a web page, which everyone should be able to go to. I've put up a demo, and I've put up the same web page here. The interesting part for this demo, though, is Certbots. So I've set up certbots.encrypt.rw, and I've delegated it to Hurricane Electric. So anything that shows anything underneath Certbots will show up in the DNS, so it'll go and ask it there. And I've created some ACME challenge CNAMEs. Again, I'll talk about those as I go through the demo. But this is a normal, ordinary DNS zone, and I've created some ordinary things in it. So for the purpose of testing, I'm going to add another little name to the DNS because I've mentioned printer before. So I'm going to add, and I'm not going to add printer to the DNS, but I am going to add a challenge for it. Let's just call it, let me spell it right, printer. So printer.encrypt.rw is not in the DNS, but this little label is ACME challenge.printer.encrypt.rw is in the DNS, and it points to ACME challenge.certbots.encrypt.rw. So I'm just going to put that in the DNS. My pipeline uses Git. You can use anything you like. You can edit the zone file on your server. There we go. And that will go in the DNS. In about 10 minutes, that will be in the DNS. So I've got 10 minutes of talking to do. So during those 10 minutes, I will talk to my other terminal window. Don't worry too much. If you feel lost, it will all start making sense. Here's our other little window, which I have now gone and lost. I am sharing a window. Why do I not see the window? Am I sharing it? There we go. All right, so this is what I've just set up, and I have installed acme.sh here. So acme.sh, I have installed it using the git clone and acme.sh -install. I've done that for you. I've done nothing else. If I do acme.sh --list, I see the certificates I have issued for this domain. I'm going to make this a little bit wider. And I've issued one for tests just to make sure that everything worked earlier today. Now let me try issuing a certificate for demo. That one was in the DNS before, so I'm going to do acme.sh issue, but I'm going to spell it right. Dear acme.sh, please give me a certificate. Which certificate would you like to get? I would like to get demo.encrypt.rw. That seems straightforward enough. I would like to use DNS Mode for this operation. And I would like which DNS plugin would I like to use? I'd like to use DNS NS updates. I think that was how it's spelled. I've now lost my notes because I'm not smart. So give me 1 moment. So just go back to my notes here. Yes, I have spelled it right. So I want a certificate, please. I would like a certificate for the name demo.encrypt.rw. I'd like to use the DNS to validate this name, and I would like to do it using NS update. I'll go through this in a moment. And the next thing I want to do is I want to use the challenge alias. If you remember earlier in the DNS, you saw that I've put a CNAME to certbots in there. So that's where this comes in, challenge alias certbots.encrypt.rw. So this entire command line says, dear acme.sh, I would like a certificate, please, for demo.encrypt.rw. Please go use the DNS using NS update. I'll talk about that in a moment, and validate my name against this alias. So if we do this, everything blows up in my face, or not. There we go. It has now generated a certificate for me. So it's in the old world order, it has now done the Openssl, GenRSA, etc., 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 and generated all that. And it's added a text record to the DNS for acme challenge.certbots.encrypt.rw. So it's added a text record there under this name, and it's gone and checked that we can get to it. And this doesn't take long because my DNS pipeline is pretty quick. It hasn't seen it yet. Takes about maybe another 10 seconds. Of course, when I did this morning, it was almost instant. When I'm doing it with an audience, it's going to need 3 or 4 tries before it gets it. But what's happening now is the acme.sh robots, the Let's Encrypt system, is checking in the DNS whether this name exists. I could now, in another terminal window, go and check the log file, whether my zone has been picked up or if I've done something stupid. I actually have. I don't think I've done something stupid. Let's take a look. All right. It is waiting. Why is it waiting? This should not take this long. This is the usual demo phenomenon. Okay. Did I break something? This is where Philip goes and debugs things. Let's go and check the DNS. So the DNS says it has sent to notify, but the zone has not been picked up. So the way this works is when we go in here, it says adding text value with the NS updates method here. It uses binds NS update mechanism to add a name to the DNS. What we are seeing here is the log file of my DNS server I've set up today. It says somewhere here, it says, here we go, I have deleted this, and here I have added a records, a text record named Q8N, blah, 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 blah. I have added it here. And meanwhile, it has actually picked it up. So that's the same one here. So this text records I've added to the DNS, and now things have been checked. And while I was talking, the certificate has been issued. So I'll scroll up again and show you this a little more calmly. So I've asked ACME to please issue me the certificate using the DNS method. And the DNS method I'm using is NS updates, which I'll talk through in a moment. Let's Encrypt, acme.sh does the generating the key thing for you, so you don't have to talk to Openssl to do it. It tells you where your private key is. You'll need this later to set up your web server, mail server, printer, whatever. There's a little bit more debugging output here. It says it's a single domain certificate. A bunch of things happen, but at the end of the day, it says, I need this challenge. If you remember my slides earlier, Let's Encrypt will tell you, please put this secret here and sign it with something. This is the same thing, but using the DNS. It says, please put this value in a text records where I can find it. So I have used NS updates to put this text records in the DNS. acme.sh says, yep, that's great. That worked. And before it's going to waste the Let's Encrypt.org robot's time with checking the certificate, it's going to check if it can find it itself. So that's what's been happening here. Every time it's gone to sleep for 10 seconds, checking if it could find this record in the DNS. It took about, 30 seconds before it found it, and then it found it. Everything was fine. So then it told Let's Encrypt.org, please go and verify this. So it went and asked Let's Encrypt.org to do this. It was busy the first time we tried, so it's going to try again. It's going to try 30 times. On the third try, it said, "Yep, everything is good." Let's Encrypt.org could see my text records. I'm now going to delete it because I don't need it anymore. and now I get a certificate out of it. This should look familiar to you if you've dealt with certificates before, and it places it here together with all of its chains. So if we look at this certificate here, the one that was issued, if we do Openssl X509 go out in that file text, and let's look at it with less, we see something that looks like an SSL certificate, or I think it looks like an SSL certificate if you look at these things every day. We see that it's been issued by Let's Encrypt's R3 certificates. We see it's been issued today, and it's valid for 90 days. So 90 days from now, this certificate is no longer valid. You'll have to renew it. And then it's got the usual encrypted gobbledygook, which you find in certificates. Notably, it's also got the certificate timestamps, which are useful for public ledgers for certificate transparency. But that's not very exciting. You can take this certificate, you plug this into your web server, and it will be a valid certificate all over the world. So I could go and do this and take the certificates and plug it in to my web server, but that's very boring. And I've already done that earlier today with the certificate for encrypt.rw. So if you find a web browser and we go here, if we go to encrypt.rw, or we go to www.encrypt.rw, if we like, it's the same thing. And we look at this certificate here, it says this is a valid certificate. It's good until the 9th of February at 2 in the afternoon in Hong Kong, whatever that is in Kigali or UTC time. And we see it was issued earlier today, and it's a 3-month validity period. So that's how simple it is. So meanwhile, while I was talking through this, hopefully the DNS will have picked up the printer I have added earlier. So if we go into here, remember I told you don't test in production. So let's not test in production. Let's try to issue a certificate for our printer. Right. So let me make this window a little bit bigger. So I'm doing the same thing. Dear Let's Encrypt, or dear acme.sh, please give me a certificate for printer.encrypt.rw. Use the same mechanism we used earlier and the same challenge alias we used earlier, but please use the Let's Encrypt test server, because I'm not sure if the DNS has caught up. So I want to test whether it works first. So before I do this, let's validate that printer.encrypt.rw, oops, it's really not in the DNS, right? It's, oops, this is dig, not bind, printer.encrypt.rw. It's really not in the DNS. It just, it does not exist. It's a name, but it's not in the DNS. So if I issue a certificate for it, that's going to fail. And now, of course, I've lost my command line, so I have to type it again because I'm not smart. acme.sh issue, spell issue, right? And then server, let's encrypt tests. Right, let's do that. There we go. It is going to try getting a certificate for me, and it's doing exactly the same thing we did earlier. It's putting this text record in the DNS now, rather than the previous one, because every time you want a certificate, you will get a different secrets to put in there, because otherwise it would be really easy. You just recycle that certificate. The same thing is happening as last time. We are waiting for the DNS to find it. So let's take a look here. This time it went a bit faster. My zone was transferred, so the DNS should be able to find it soon. Give this a moment. No, still not there. Come on. It should be there now. Or maybe not. See, this is why we don't test in production. If this times out, then we'd have to start over and we'd run into limits. Meanwhile, it has found it. So same thing again. Let's Encrypt was a bit busy, but at the end of the day, it issued my certificate here. If we go and look closely at the certificates, if we go and look closely at this, it says, hey, here's your certificate. This one was issued by the staging environment. So this one is not valid. It's not trustworthy. It won't work on the internet, but for all intents and purposes, it's a real certificate. And what we've done now is we validated that our DNS pipeline works. So if I want to go and issue a real certificate that's trusted by everyone on the internet, I just take this Let's Encrypt test away, and it will issue a certificate for me, which I can trust anywhere on the internet. And that's really nice. I've been warned that nobody will ever ask me any questions, but if you'd like to change your mind and ask me any questions, you're allowed to stop me as I go along. So far, I've done the explanation of what Let's Encrypt is good for and how you can use it. So once you've set it up, how this acme.sh shell script can help you issue certificates for systems that are not really on the internet. Remember, this printer is not on the internet. Let me actually issue a real certificate. Let me just do that. So I'll spell this right. So I'll take this away and I will issue a certificate for this using the real Let's Encrypt system. It's going to issue a certificate for printer.encrypt.rw, which does not exist in the real DNS. The only thing that exists in the DNS is its challenge. And certainly there's no printer.encrypt.rw on the internet, but we've issued a certificate for it using the, and it says force. Oh, right, because it now exists in the testing setup, so I need to remove it there first. Smart Philip. There we go, that goes away. Actually, just leave it there. I can reuse them. Yeah, that would work, maybe. So I'm issuing the certificate again. Now I'm issuing it in the production system, and the same thing is going to happen. Again, it's issued a new secret for me to validate because the staging environment knows this name exists, but the real Let's Encrypt server does not. So it needs to go and validate it again, but that's not going to be a problem. There we go. Takes seconds. There, it's verified. It's in the queue. And now we have a real certificate, which again, we can go and validate. Spell it right. And this one has been issued with the real Let's Encrypt certificate. So this certificate is valid on the internet. Anyone with any modern version of Firefox, Chrome, Safari, whatever, can go to printer.encrypt.rw if they have it in their DNS, or they can go to their printer and they won't get any scary certificate warnings. So let's go through this, this pipeline I've set up. So the way I issued the certificate is I said DNS, NS update. What this means is that acme.sh is going to use the binds NS update system to add and remove challenges to a zone called certbots.encrypt.rw. Let's go and look at my DNS configuration, which is helpfully sitting in this other window. This is running on FreeBSD. You can run it on any other system. If you like Linux, well, my usual view is you don't have to live this way, but you can run this on Linux just as well as on FreeBSD. So on FreeBSD, our bind configuration lives in user local etc namedb, and we've got a file called namedb.conf. There will be a bunch of secrets on your screen. You can copy and paste these with reckless abandon. In about an hour after this presentation, I'm throwing this machine away. So these secrets are obviously not important to my real workflow. So I've set up a DNS server on certbots.encrypt.rw. Some of these options are ordinary bind things. It's a FreeBSD jail. It's got a loopback address, and it's got a real IPv6 address. More on that in a moment. RNDC is what I use to control the name server. I only allow this from the same machine. And then we get to the interesting things. I have generated a key called certbot key to update the certbots.encrypt.rw zone. You generate this key in exactly the same way you generate tsig keys. You use tsig keygen. It will give you a key, and you just copy and paste this key file into your bind configuration, and you change the name as much as you like. So every time you run this, you get another key, and you can just copy and paste that in. I think Tuksu was on this call. She was trying to set this up a few months ago and struggling with it. And I figured out how that worked now. So we've taken one of those keys, we've pasted it in here, and I've just called it certbot key. This is a shared secret. So to use this key, NS update just uses the same key. I'll show you the configuration in a moment. As we saw in the first terminal window, I had big certbots.encrypt.rw is hosted by Hurricane Electric's DNS. They transfer the zone from me. I use Hurricane Electric's DNS because it's anycast, it's fast, and it's easy to set up. You can use your own DNS servers if you like. The only thing that really matters is that you have a way to show your text records to the Let's Encrypt validation server within a reasonable amount of time. If that means physically putting your zone file on another machine and typing something, you can do that. You can make the robot wait for several hours. I think 30 seconds is a reasonable time to wait for a record to appear in a DNS, but it can wait for, well, I'm not sure if there's a practical limit, but it can wait for a long time for you to put that zone in the DNS. But again, don't do it manually because that's not the point of this exercise. So that's what the second key is for. The second key is what Hurricane Electric uses to transfer my zone into their public DNS. Finally, we have the zone itself, certbots.encrypt.rw. It's a master zone. It lives in this directory. It's a dynamic zone, and I've given it a name. We'll take a look at the zone in a moment. And I've configured an update policy. This update policy says, grant this key, certbot key, the one above here, grant that one permission to manipulate this specific text record, nothing else. So if this key leaks. You're all frantically copying this key down to mess with me, and that's fine. Please do. I shouldn't be showing keys on the internet if I cared about them. But this key, the only thing this key can change is this specific record, and this specific record is the one that will be checked by the Let's Encrypt system to see if you actually have control over this name. Finally, because I'm using Hurricane Electric's DNS, I need to notify their servers using the key I've shared with them to pick up my zone, and then they will transfer this zone from me, again, using that same key. In your setup, you may or may not need these bits. I've just set it up like this because this is the way my production DNS works. The system is infinitely flexible. This is using NS updates with a name server I set up myself with a zone like this. If we go back to acme.sh and we take a look at their DNS API, all of these are supported methods for using the DNS. I've just picked one of them, which is NS updates somewhere here in alphabetical order. There we go. I just use this one because I can set it up and I can talk about it for about half an hour without hopefully putting anyone to sleep. If you are using Cloudflare, you can generate a token in your Cloudflare management portal for your DNS, and you can say, dear acme.sh, please issue me this certificate, and instead of using NS updates, you would use DNS CF, for instance. For my own DNS, I also use Azure, Microsoft Azure, which you'll have to generate some keys for to use their API. And the same thing will happen at the end of the day. A text record goes into your DNS, let'sencrypt.org goes and validates it. The text record is removed again, and you get a certificate out of it. And every month, acme.sh goes and renews your certificates and checks that this works. There's a whole bunch of these in here. NSD puts a text record in a file for you. PowerDNS uses the PowerDNS API to put things in. I thought there was one in here. Oh, PDNS is what it's called. Vulture uses their management API, and there's literally dozens of these. Depending on how your DNS is set up, you will find a way to put your text records in the DNS and take it out again. The only thing that matters is you must be able to put a text record in and then remove the text record again. AWS is here as well. That's another popular one. So that's pretty easy. Let me go back to my presentation in case I've forgotten anything. Where's my presentation gone? That's this file here. So this is just the same thing again. So the way this system works is you verify ownership of your domain by checking a text record in the DNS. If you can put a text record in the DNS, you can assert that you own this namespace, and let'sencrypt.org will issue a certificate for you. Zero SSL works the same way. I've just used Let's Encrypt as an example here. The magic I've relied on here to issue certificates for systems that are not on the real internet is I've used indirection. So I've used the CNAME to point this, in this case, not to Azure, but to my Certbots. And this, I've not updated my slides. So this is easy to use. The Azure API is easy to use. NS update is not much more difficult to use. The CNAME, the indirection, just ensures that I can issue certificates for names that are not in the public DNS. Right, so that was a DNS hook. acme.sh also has deploy hooks. So once you've generated the certificates, let me go back to my my terminal here, if I can find it. Share screen, and one of these is my window. I don't remember which window is it. I think it's this window. No, it's not. Probably this window. There we go. Is it that window? No, it's not that window. Go away, window. I have too many windows. Is it this window? No, that's the same window I had last time. There we go. That's the right window. Here we go. Ta-da. That was the DNS hooks. Now you've got your certificates. So when we scroll up a bit, it's put the certificates in a file on your file system. That's not very exciting. So the next thing you want to do is you want to deploy this probably to your web server. And there's an infinite number of ways you can do this. What I like to do is I just like to deploy. So deploy means now take the certificates and do something with it. Let's take our printer. I think I called it rwnog. Oops. Deploy hook not found. All right. I think I called it something else. I don't remember what I called it. Doesn't really matter. I'm sure I can find it. I call it Encrypt RW. Good. Let's do that. So what this hook does is it just puts the certificates in my public HTML directory where a web server can pick it up. You've got a whole bunch of other deploy hooks here. You've got an Nginx deploy hook, which will modify your web server configuration for you. There's a deploy hook for Apache, which will do the same thing for Apache. There's a deploy hook for MySQLD, which will do it for your database server. And there's a whole bunch of these, and I've written this one today, and it's not a very exciting one. It does copy my certificates to my public HTML directory, and you can be completely flexible with this. The reason I do it like this is because then I can fetch my certificates and let other machines deploy them for me. If you run your Certbots on a machine with your web server or on another jail on the same machine, you might be able to restart your web server or something with this hook directly. I'm not going to go into it, it's too much depth, but the possibilities are really endless. You can do whatever you like in this deploy hook. It takes the name of your certificates and its chain files, and it lets you do anything with them. So if anything in your case means, upload my certificate to my printer and restart the printer, you can do that in a deploy hook. My Certbot is running on a machine on the other side of the world from my printer. So instead, I have a machine next to my printer which downloads the keys or the certificates rather from a web server and then uploads them to the printer. That's just an extra level of indirection. The point I'm trying to make here is that it's completely flexible, and the flexibility is bounded by what you can do in a shell script, which is pretty flexible, I think. So let me go back to my slides here. Let's see, where are they? Here we are. No, that's not it. Lost my slides again. There we go. That is my slide. Everything about this acme.sh script can be customized. This is in stark contrast with the Certbots reference implementation, which is pretty well integrated and also pretty baroque. And the hooks are simple shell scripts. So anything you can type in a shell script, you can do in a deploy hook. And there's plenty of examples in the repository. I showed you there was Apache, there's Nginx and MySQL. There's lots more. And if you go look around GitHub, you will find more of that. If you do want to use Azure or something like Cloudflare, it's basically the same thing. You'll need to create a service principal with permission to modify your zone. So in this demo, I used NS updates and I showed you the bind configuration. You need a key which is allowed to run NS updates. If you use Azure, you'll need to generate a principal that's allowed to update your DNS zone. Same thing if you use Cloudflare, you'll need to get an API token. Again, do try to restrict access as much as possible. In this demo I showed you in my bind configuration file, I've restricted that key to updating only text records and nothing else. So in Cloudflare, just restrict it to the zone you want to update and nothing else. Yeah, and that's really all I have in this presentation. I've been talking for about an hour and a bit. There's a lot of pointers to more resources on the let'sencrypt.org webpage, and the acme.sh script has a wiki with lots of examples for how to do this. I'm just one crazy person who set it up this way. If you go and look on YouTube for other versions of this specific presentation, which I've given, you'll find one where I've done the same thing using Azure's DNS. Today I used binds because I helped someone fix this setup after I gave my presentation in Kenya, and I just wanted to see that I could do it. So with all that said, I don't think I have anything new to say, so I would love to hear some questions or comments, or if people want to throw things at me.
Thank you, Phil. We have some couple of questions here.
Good.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
My first question is, how can you get a JKS file from acm.ch?
How do I get a what file?
A JKS, if you're using like a Resign web server.
Oh, JKS. Oh, I see where this question comes from. You're trying to fix your thing. JKS. I don't actually know what file format that is, but it shouldn't be too hard. Resign, is that the web server? I don't know. Let me find out for you. All right. Let me find out. And it wants a JKS, resin web server. Okay. It wants a JKS certificate. All right.
Probably,
let's find out.
Probably the way we use it from the Certbots, not from the acme.ch. You generate what you call. You generate what we call.
Okay. I think I see. This is a Java thing, isn't it? Yes.
Yes.
The way you get it out of there, I think, is in your deploy step. Let me. I'm just looking up the format here. I have no idea. Oh, it's a Java key store. Okay. Java key store. Yes, you can generate those with Openssl. You would have to do that in your deploy file. Yeah, shouldn't be too difficult. I think the way you would do it is in your deploy. Let me put that up again, if I can find the right window. Share my screen. I think it was this one. There we go. I think what you would do is you would do something here somewhere. So you would do key tool something out. Oops, minus out. Your keys dot JKS, where the something are an exercise for the reader. but I will look it up in the background, and I'll probably find it maybe before the end of this question round. But so the simple answer is you would do it in your deploy hook. So this JKS file, as far as I can tell from cursory looking on DuckDuckGo, is a container format around PKCS12. So yeah, okay. Yeah, I think you need to tell Openssl to generate a PKCS12 file, which you can then use keytool to import. Should not be difficult. Actually, I think I've just found it. Yes, I have just found it. I have useful friends. There we go. So the way this works, as far as I can tell, is this way. Where's my terminal window gone? Here it is. You would do something like this. And I'll send this to you by email as well. I think you put your email address in the chat earlier. So this would be your P12. So before you do this, you need to do Openssl PKCS12 something. Yeah. Okay, yes, I see how this would work. Yeah, so you do, in your deploy hook, you do Openssl PKCS12 exports minus out, and this can just be a temp file. Can it? I don't know. Just put it somewhere. I don't know. Like that, I think, and then it needs a name. Here. And the key, oh, it does need the key. Actually, I don't think it needs the key. No, it does need the key. So you'll need to, and you will get the key in here as well. So you'll need to run Openssl PKCS12 to generate a PKCS12 file. And then you need to run keytool to take that PKCS12 file and turn it into a Java key store file, and then you need to put that one somewhere. So if you run this on the same machine as your web server, you can do that directly. If you run it on another machine, on an independent Certbot machine, you would generate your file and put the JKS file somewhere. But since that file also contains your private keys, you'd have to be a little bit careful not to expose those to the internet. So I think the short answer is you can do this, you can make this work, clearly. The longer answer is you'll have to be a little bit careful not to leak your keys. But I'll look this up and I'll send you an email once I've had a couple of minutes to think, because I think this is fairly easy to make work. That was a good question. I like questions like this.
And then you're seeing how to generate it and then how to deploy it, because it has some password somewhere.
Right. So in the JKS world, it has a password. So that what deploy does, deploy can do anything you want it to do. So in many deployments, deploy simply means put the new version of the public key somewhere where my web server can see it. In your resin case, apparently you need to also include the private keys. So I've not used resin myself. I'm going to look into it. But I think the way it works is the same. You put this JKS file somewhere, and then the machine running resin will download it from there and install it, probably as a cron job or as something scheduled every month, a couple of hours after your ACME cron job runs. Does that make sense? It's asynchronous. It's not, so Certbot runs on the same machine as your web server. ACME.sh can run on the same machine as your web server, but it does not have to. So the way I run it is I run it on a dedicated machine, and I generate the new certificates. And then the machines that use the certificates download their updated certificates and restart if necessary. So I think in your resin use case, it's going to be very similar. You'll generate your JKS file and put it somewhere where resin can find it, let resin download it and import it. So probably you'll need to agree on a password to make this secure. I don't know, I've not looked closely enough. The first time I've heard of resin was when you asked this question.
Okay, thank you, Philip. Is there anyone from the participants who has any question? You can unmute yourself, then you ask a question. But Phil, before others ask questions, using this script, does it renew the certificate automatically?
Yes, it does. So one of the things the ACME.sh install does is it runs a cron job at a random time of day. So in this case, 39 minutes after midnight every day, and it runs with minus cron. So every day at midnight, it's going to check: do I need to renew any certificates? Do I need to renew any certificates? Do I need to renew any certificates? And about a month before your certificate expires, it's going to update it for you. So it does it automatically. Yeah.
I'm going to start using this script.
So it does the update and it calls the hook, the deploy hook. So it remembers which deploy script you use, and it will call that one to deploy it again. So in my example of the printer, every month it will deploy it to my printer. So it'll renew the certificates and it will upload the new certificate to my printer. I have a really ugly script which I cannot share because I don't think you need to know the password to my printer. Not that it's on the internet, but but yeah, so you can generate certificates for anything if you're limited by your imagination and shell scripting skills rather than by the system.
Okay. Is there anyone from this room who has a question?
If you're too shy to ask questions, you can also type them in the chat window, or if you think of a question after we end our tutorial, you can always email me as well. My email address is not very difficult to find. I'm always happy to help out.
I think.
So meanwhile, I've been looking at your JKS thing in the background. I asked someone who knows these things, and I think I have a deploy script for you. So I'll email one to you, Richard, and you can tell me if it works. And then you can go and fix your whois.
But what issue is on my whois? There's a certificate installed on it. What issue is there?
The problem you have, let me just unshare the screen and look at the other screen. If I can find it, it was somewhere.
Can you use your browser and type who is Api?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the right window because I've got a million of them. So here we go. I think that's the one. So whois.richter.org.rw. It says, if we go and view the certificates, it says that your R3 certificate has expired. So if we actually, this is not a very useful thing. Let's look at it. Whoops, where's my Zoom window gone? Let me do something a little bit smarter or less smart. Let's go here. Is this a good terminal window? Yes, it is. Oops, that one. And we want to go to 443. Oops, S client, sorry. So we go into here, and you are sending, when I connect to your web server, you are sending me a certificate for whois.richter.org.rw, and it says I can't get your local issuer certificate because you're only sending this certificate. You're not sending a chain. So it's going to pick up the R3 certificate that's stored presumably on my laptop, which I've not updated in a while, and this one has expired. So this R3 has expired. If you compare this with, if I connect SSL as client connect encrypt.rw, that's what I just set up earlier today. We are getting, I'm sending along both the certificates itself and the intermediate certificates all the way to the root. So you're only sending your certificates and you're relying on the client to have an up-to-date copy of this R3 certificate. The R3 certificate expired a couple of weeks ago. And the normal way you protect against that is by also sending your intermediate certificates in the, I don't know how Certbots does it, but the acme.sh, you get a full chain file. If I scroll up a little bit more, I might actually have it. Yeah, you get your certificates, you get your .cir file, you have your key, which is your private key, and then you've got your certificate authority certificates. So these are all the intermediates. And then for your benefits, it also gives you a full chain file. And what's for robustness, it's best to serve the full chain file rather than just the certificate file, because then if one of the intermediate certificates expires, you've still sent an up-to-date one with your certificates, if that makes sense. I might have gone through that very quickly.
And then how can I fix it? Should I regenerate the new certificate?
I think the easy way to fix it is see if Certbots also gives you a full chain file, and wherever you're currently using the certificates, just use the full chain. And if that doesn't fix it, I think Resin probably has a setting somewhere for the certificate, the intermediate certificates. So things to look for in the manual are intermediate certificates. But I will look up how Resin works because I've not heard of it before. I'll send you it.
It's weird from my side. I see it is secured from my side.
Okay. So yeah, well, so the R3 intermediate certificates expired a few weeks ago. You're certainly not the only one who has this problem. The problem is that everyone on the internet has different versions of this R3 3 certificates, and I happen to have an expired one. Probably when I reboot my laptop, I will have an updated one, or well, reboot my laptop. When I upgrade my laptop, I will get an upgraded one. But in the meantime, until I reboot my laptop, and when this happens again, if you include the intermediate certificates with your certificates, it doesn't matter what I have on my laptop. The only one that matters is the actual root certificate. So this was there was a post on Let's Encrypt's webpage a few weeks ago about their intermediate certificates. I think it happened was it in September? I can't remember. Oh, here we go. October was it? Let me share this window with you. This is what happens. Where's this window? There we go. So this is what happens. So one of the intermediate certificates expired, and apparently I still have that one. And the end advice is if you include your intermediate certificates, you'll not run into it, or no one will run into any problems. And eventually the problem will go away by itself because people will upgrade their laptops and things. So it's an intermediate certificate that has expired. So I can't remember, the R3 one, or one of the ones that signed R3. It's a common problem. You are not alone.
There's a question from in the chat. There's someone who is asking, can we do the same for wildcard certificate?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can issue a wildcard certificate. You should not issue a wildcard certificate because wildcard certificates are evil. But yes, you can issue a wildcard certificate. There's documentation on the acme.sh webpage for how to issue a wildcard. You'll have to put something in the DNS and that'll work. But usually you probably don't want a wildcard. There's not many real world use cases for wildcards that can't be fixed by doing a little bit more thinking ahead of time. But the answer to your question is yes, you can issue wildcard certificates. And I can probably issue one. I've not actually set up the DNS. Yeah, I need to add something to the DNS for that to work. But yes, you can generate a wildcard certificate. I see another question here. Talked about the CNAME, how you've added the CNAME. Oh, yes. Let me go back to my original window somewhere. Where's my window? I share screen, and it's one of these. I don't remember which one of these it is. I have so many terminal windows open. It's a little bit embarrassing. Where are you? There we go. It's this one. So this is the encrypt.rw zone file. And at the bottom here, I've got underline ACME minus challenge dot demo dot encrypt.rw. So imagine that it says dot encrypt.rw at the end is a CNAME to underline ACME dot challenge dot certbots dot encrypt.rw. And just above it, I've actually showed how to redirect challenges out of zone. So your certbot does not even need to run within your own namespace. You can issue certificates for other domains as well. The only thing you need to do is you need to add this name, ACME challenge dot whatever name you want to generate needs to point to a record over which you have control. And this can be multiple levels of indirection if you want to go really crazy. The only thing Let's Encrypt cares about is that it can validate this name. So if I scroll up in my other terminal window again, this one, I think. Yeah, if I scroll up this one again, if I have enough buffer, yes, I do. So the only thing Let's Encrypt cares about is it cares that that's the usual reaction I get. ACME challenge dot whatever name you've got that it exists, and if you CNAME that one to somewhere else, that will work for you. So you can have any number of CNAMEs there, but at the end of the day, it needs to resolve. So if you can point underline ACME minus challenge dot printer dot encrypt.rw somewhere you have control over, you can generate the certificate for it. I hope that answers the question. Any other questions?
Is there any other questions from the team? If there is no questions, I think we can close.
You're more than welcome to send me email as well. My email address is somewhere near the top of your chat window, and it's also not very difficult to find. Philip@trouble.is.
There's someone who asked if they can get the presentation.
Yes, of course. I've sent a copy to Grace earlier today. I'm sure she can share it with you. And I think this Zoom session is also being recorded. So anything I said will be held against me, I'm sure. So you can go and watch it again at your leisure.
I think we can stop from here. If there is no more questions from the team. I think we can welcome Geoffrey.
Yes, thank you, Richard. This is Geoffrey from Victor. As we are closing for this webinar, we want to thank the participants who have managed to attend. And the main objective of these webinars is to build the community, the internet community as our mandate. So I want to thank you for making it, for participating, and we hope that your expectations have been met by the facilitator of the webinar. We want to thank Mr. Phil for making it, for making this wonderful presentation and explanations to the trainees or the participants of today's webinar. And we hope to have more webinars in the future. So we shall keep posting them so that whoever is interested in such kind of a webinar joins. So it was very interactive. I was just following, and I'm not a technical person, but I could get something. So
I know I went through this rather quickly, but you can always watch me on half speed on YouTube.
I know. So thank you guys. Thank you very much. Thank you, Philip, for making this happen today. We hope that the participants have taken a lot from the webinar, and they make it live. That means they are going to use it. Thank you, and
Stuff.
bye for now. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. And yeah, send me email. And I look forward to doing more of these presentations. It's really not difficult to convince me to talk about anything.
Sure.
Have a good afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.